It's been a week today since ICC opened and I've been raiding far too much. Well, that's what the wife tells me at least. Can you really raid ICC too much though? So how has ICC been and Phase 4 in general? Let's start with the phase in general before we move on to ICC specifically. The introduction of the Scottejaye system and random dungeon finder, from my perspective at least, seems to have been a big hit. I've cried on videos for months now that the game needs random dungeon finder, and now it's here. I personally absolutely love it. Being able to just grab a few people from the guild and not worry about filling the group completely, chucking yourself in the queue and getting straight into the dungeon is just a game changer. It's been great to see how short the queues are, but we know they're likely to get longer as we go through the phase and less people need to worry about their daily each day or are so geared from ICC they just can't be asked anymore. Which, to be completely honest, from the rate that we're getting emblems from all these different sources, I don't think it's going to take very long. It's probably a good time to mention the Headless Horseman as well. Even though it's not Phase 4 specific, it does happen to have fell at the right time because we've got it at the start of the phase. The items like the rings, weapon and head have all been updated to 232, so if you're gearing an ult, it's a great way to get some catch-up gear. And the fact that you don't need to stand there doing 5 separate summons is also great. So if you wasn't aware, you can just queue for it using RDF, kill the boss once and get your bag. In the bag, this is where you'll find your mount, if you're lucky. And to be honest, I'd get in there every day and do it because the mount chance from the bag seems ludicrously high for some reason. I'm seeing the achievement for obtaining the mount popping up in guild chat so many times a day, I feel like there might be something wrong. So really my advice would be get in and get it just in case it gets fixed. I mean, it might not get fixed, but it just seems a very high chance of coming from that bag. Another reason why you absolutely want to be doing this every day is because it's an extra 2 emblems of frost a day, which you definitely don't want to miss. If you're trying to get what a long strange trip it's been because you've missed this event last year, it's probably worth finishing off some of the achievements as well. And don't forget, if you've queued for it once to do it in RDF to get your bag to potentially get the mount or whatever, that's not it. You can do it as many times as you want to get the rings or the head or the weapon. So if you're actually doing it for gear, you can just keep queuing and queuing and queuing until you've got what you want. Overall, the reason I'm really impressed with the event this year is because it literally gives everyone from top-end raiders to casuals something to go there for. Be it emblems for top-end raiders or just everyone in general. And obviously, the more casual player or your ults, some nice 232 gear. There's one thing I haven't done yet because I just haven't had the time outside of raids to do it, and that's start leveling an ult. But just having the ability to queue for random dungeons while running around questing is something I really cannot wait to get stuck into. I can't really comment on the queue times too much, but maybe you can let me know in the comments just what they've been like. Are they long? Are they short? You know, how long is it taking you as a tank? I'm assuming fairly instant, and then probably when you get to sort of the Outland RDF, it might slow down a little bit for everyone, but let me know in the comments how long it's taking on average to get in RDF at these lower levels. We know that Hallion is a single boss in Ruby Sanctum that isn't available yet, and it will be part of Phase 4, but Blizzard said it'll be several weeks after ICC, so we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. Moving on to ICC, there was a lot of speculation around just how hard it's going to be and how long it will take for the Lich King to fall for the first time on 25-man Heroic. It was fairly obvious to many of us that he wouldn't last very long, and after only around 90 minutes of being available, he was already on the floor. There's no doubt that this raid is a step up compared to everything released so far in Classic, but at the time of recording, there's hundreds of guilds working on getting the Lich King down and over 30 guilds that have already killed him, and it's only week 2. The thing you have to remember is when you look at guilds killing the normal versions of these fights, there's a fairly small percentage that are killing these bosses on Heroic. Taking Putricide for example, 90% of raiding guilds have only killed it on normal. And then going to the extremes of the Lich King on Heroic, it's less than 2% of guilds that are capable of killing the Lich King on normal that are actually getting it on Heroic. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of guilds still even progressing on normal fights. With that in mind, some of these statistics will definitely help you as a guild decide where you should be putting your focus. Talking purely from my own experience over the last week, I can honestly say that the raid with a 0% buff as we have it at the moment is a really good challenge. While I don't consider many of these bosses to be overly complex, it more comes down to personal responsibility. A single mistake from someone stands out like a Big Mac in a vegetarian's lunchbox. Using good weak auras or DBM, bigwigs or whatever else you need to help you know when things are coming in will ultimately only get you so far, because you need to be reacting appropriately to what those are warning you of. Most content creators will be solely focusing on 25-man Heroic difficulty, but even looking at 10-man is pretty mental. In the last week, I've done 10-man now twice on my Rep Paladin, once on a Holy Paladin, a Feral Druid, and a Disc Priest. All these runs with varying success. What you got to remember though is I'm running those with mostly the same people, So your comp, even in a 10-man, really does matter. If you're wanting to get the majority of the bosses down on Heroic, using Scottejaye as an example, ensuring you've got an off-spec healer to go up to 3 makes life incredibly easy. The tank damage as an example from Festagut, Council, or even the Lich King makes having a Holy Paladin almost essential if you're wanting to down them on Heroic. Again, I said almost essential. That doesn't mean if you've got 2 very, very good healers and one of them's not a Holy Paladin, you can't do it, because you absolutely can, but having a Holy Paladin definitely smooths out a lot of these fights. But like I say, if you've got 2 absolute God mode healers that aren't a Paladin, you'll probably be alright. But the fact still stands that having a Holy Paladin will just make many of these fights a hell of a lot easier. Maximising the buffs that you can bring to a 10-man will also help a lot, but ultimately what really gets you through will be everyone having a good grasp of what's going on each fight. I must admit, the varying levels of success in my 10-mans has actually really surprised me. I feel like I probably went in too confident, expecting things to just fall over, and that's definitely not been the case, not even on 10-man. For many of you that watch me live stream, which is a really good time to plug the stream, I stream over on Kick at kick.com/Scottejaye. You'll know I raid on both EU and NA because I like to torture myself. So I'm actually pushing through ICC progress with 2 different guilds. The funny thing is, across 2 completely different groups of people, where the problems lie on a boss-by-boss basis has been exactly the same. On EU, we should be working on the Lich King this week on Heroic, which I have no doubt is going to be a wipe fest for many hours before we get it down, and in the NA guild, it's a little bit further behind, with around 4 bosses left to work through on Heroic. Both these raid groups had very limited time on the PTR, so it's mostly true progress in a live setting, and I'm happy with how it's going so far, but it is really interesting to see that both guilds, 2 completely different groups of people, same sort of stumbling blocks, if you like, on the same bosses. But taking from my own experiences so far and the statistics of how many guilds have killed each boss, it's fairly safe to say once you're confident enough to start switching some of these bosses onto Heroic to start getting that sweet 277 loot, there should be a path you follow. But some bosses, which while many guilds haven't killed in comparison to others, if your raid group consists of a raid team of people that can handle mechanics but maybe not got the highest damage or the highest healing output, there are some that you shouldn't skip, that you might actually have an easier time on. What I mean by this is, if you've got cautious, clever players, you could probably get through things like Lady Death Whisper. I think Lady Death Whisper is a really good example of a boss that has been historically scary, even though it's only the 2nd boss of a raid. But honestly, as long as your raid has warnings for when ghosts are spawning, and you prioritise moving from them, there's no rush with this fight at all, meaning you do not need massive amounts of damage. So it's definitely worth a few pulls to see how your raid reacts to it. But in the risky one aside though, you absolutely should be doing Gunship Heroic every week because it is literally free loot. Marrogar can be quite healing intensive, but really if you can kill it on normal, you'll probably be fine on Heroic, even if you just need to take 1 extra healer compared to what you normally would on normal. And the other one really would be Rotface. You only have to look at the statistics again. More people have done Rotface Heroic than even Valeria Heroic, which I must admit really surprised me. If you have a couple of decent Holy Paladins, you should definitely at least start having a go at Valeria Heroic, because ultimately the fight doesn't change all that much. Your healers that are going into the portals to stack up the healing buff just need to be on their game and not forget to heal themselves, like I've definitely never ever done. It's when you get to this point that your decisions on what to focus on don't become as clear. It's really going to come down to your raid's ability and where its strengths lie. Sarfang is definitely the easiest M-Wing boss to start getting heroic tokens from, and I'd say Putricide is the hardest. Scottejaye is extremely mechanically demanding, and Blood Queen Lanafel just requires good positioning with both good damage and good healing. Overall, I'm absolutely loving Phase 4. It's been hard to pull myself away from it, as you can probably tell due to the lack of videos the last few days. We've got BlizzCon next month, which is going to answer a lot of questions for the future of WoW, so no doubt I'll have a speculation video coming soon, what I think we're going to see at BlizzCon. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. Obviously, like the video while you're down there subscribing as well. That really does help out. When it comes to future content, as you can imagine, I'm hedging my bets and I assume we're going to get Cataclysm Classic, so expect to see a lot more Cataclysm content in the future, but of course that doesn't mean Phase 4's done for me. There's going to be plenty of Phase 4 content still coming all the way up until the pre-patch. Again, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.